So now the other thing that's important to know, like just like any intelligence collection method, you can't put 100% in it, right? It's also not a good idea to put everything on one viewer, right? It's best to have a constellation of viewers independently viewing the same target.
Like in separate rooms, blind completely.
Yep. And then taking the correlation of those things and seeing where things match.
Yeah.
And then those are more likely to be correct, but it's not like a fail-safe. It's always right 100% of the time. I think usually it's around, for a good viewer, maybe 60% accurate. But if I just give you pencil and paper and tell you to describe literally anything in the universe,
and I'm 60% accurate,
and you're
sign
60%,
me up, Chief.
Yeah, and you're 60% accurate, something's going on.
Yeah,
like something is accurate.
What do we know about that science? I've talked to different people about this, but you're pretty deep into it, because before I actually ask that question, the one part where I've had conversations with different remote viewers or people that have been around remote viewers where they'll make a claim where I'm like, I don't know about that, is when they'll say, well, technically most people can actually tap into this and do this. And actually my friend, Dr. Julian Mossbridge, who's amazing, I believe she was even saying something like that. And that was the one thing where I'm like, Julia, I feel like, if you're doing this, that's one thing, but I don't know if me, Joe, and Nacho are going to start seeing fucking, Iraqi prisons in 2 seconds right now if we had to lock in and do it. So what is the science that allows at least some people to do it? And what is the, in your opinion, the validity of an argument from people like Julia that might say a lot of people could technically do it?
Yeah, so a number of things to unpack. So number one, when they were first coming up with this protocol, they were doing these outbounder experiments, right? Where they would just send a team out to some location, and then they would just ask somebody, like, just describe where this team is. They weren't using the numbers or anything like that yet. But then Ingo Swann was tasked by the Army, like, look, we can't do this loosey-goosey, like, I'm feeling my aperture perception's opening, and I'm feeling it, like I'm in the right mood, and like we need soldiers to be able to do this. So we need to have a step-by-step protocol where, you can train anybody to do it. And that's real. It's just like, can everybody play basketball? Well, like the paralyzed person probably can't, right? But most people can, right? Are they going to be good at it? No, but they can, most people have the capacity to play. It's the same thing with psi ability. But the reason it's not more widespread, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, is that does our intelligence community really want like 2 middle-aged women like remote viewing Langley, Virginia and then posting it on Twitter?
That's the thing. Where does it stop? Like you can't put like a fucking Iron Dome of remote viewing around any place you want.
There are means to do it, but
there are.
But a Faraday cage ain't going to do it, right?
Okay.
Like it works through Faraday cages, so it's not. I don't want to say it's not electromagnetic, but it's like a non-local form of perception. You're talking about quantum mechanics, quantum coupling, that sort of stuff, because everybody's connected. This you hear this kind of like a mantra, but there's something to that. In terms of, sorry, what was the question again?
Well, I was talking about what is the science behind being able to do it, and the other part of it was like, which is kind of what you were just talking about, which is, well, could everyone technically do it? That kind of thing.
So the answer to that is most people have the capacity to do it, but it's like anything, it requires practice. In terms of the science, I've heard a variety of different explanations. So at the biological level, the person that you want to look at is a remote viewer called Edward Reardon. Now, he doesn't have a science background. He's not a biologist. He's arrived at the way he thinks it works entirely through his own kind of perception and remote viewing. So again, I'd have to there's a whole episode I do with him on this, and I'm not cued in, but there's some parts of the brain. I think this CA3 component of the brain is somehow related. The caudate putamen is also somewhat related to it. And then there's a way that you receive, kind of think of the information that people received from non-local consciousness is like just cloud computing, right? And then the brain is a transceiver. So it comes from somewhere. And then your brain detects, decodes, and objectifies this information as it comes in.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's kind of the biological side of it. And then as it starts going through your brain, it passes through all those parts of the brain that, again, I'm not an expert on it. And this is just, and it's also his own perception. In terms of how I think a David Morehouse has described it, and, we'll get into, I'm sure heard of Itzhak Bentov and
Morehouse has done a couple great podcasts with Danny in the past, but yeah, there's a lot of legendary names here.
Yeah. So, so the way he would explain it is there's this 8-dimensional holographic field, right? And what we're doing is we're accessing that field and we're trying to collapse that data into 3-dimensional, or actually 4-dimensional space-time, right? Because there's a time component of the 4th dimension. And you're just kind of reaching out that information that everybody is able to access. There are also, and this kind of goes separately, I'm taking kind of another area of physics that I know very little about, but is similar. And this is like the E8 lattice theory, right? Which again, it's like this reality is some 8-dimensional hypercube, and there are little tiny crystals that are part of it that are of Planck length, right? And our reality is basically a projection of that into lower dimensions. So think of it as like shadow of a higher dimension. And it's built out of something they call quasi-crystals. There's something about Lie groups. Don't ask me what a Lie group is. I'm not a physicist. But that could also be a similar mechanism to what Morehouse was explaining.
How do you spell Lie group? Is it
LIE?
Like LIE?
Yeah,
like
LIE.
That? Can we pull that up, Steve?
Yeah, you're going to get like physicist gibberish. Like it's going to be like.
Well, let's try to decode it in New Jersey right here. See what we got.
We're looking at the I Ching, huh?
Well, we had that earlier.
Yeah, LIE. You're going to get some like
Lie groups and remote sensing scene classification. That sounds about right, right? In this.
Yeah, it's mathematics too. So it's like Lie groups are applied to.
Yeah, you already searched it.
Put E8 lattice Lie group.
Is that how you spell? You want to spell? The E8 lattice is a highly symmetric 8-dimensional structure linked to the largest exceptional Lie group containing 240 root points. I understood all that. I just want to be very clear.
Yeah,
I know exactly. I'm picking up what they're lifting.
Yeah, the root points are pretty important.
It acts as go back to that, Steve. Sorry. It acts as a potential foundation for unified field theories, notably used by A. Garrett Lisi to suggest a connection between particles, forces, and gravity. The 248-dimensional E8 Lie group represents a complex 8-dimensional crystal structure. It sounds really cool.
Yeah, so that not only is a potential explanation for remote viewing, it's also a potential explanation for what's going on with when people talk about interdimensional beings and stuff like that.
This is an explanation for that.
Yeah. Yeah. If every reality is a shadow of this other reality, right? And you change an object, there'll be like an infinite number of overlapping shadows. So think of a reality or dimension. The thing that pisses me off is every time one of these like whistleblowers, they're not whistleblowers, how I know they're not whistleblowers? Because they're still alive. So I'm just, so they've been allowed to talk about whatever they're talking about. Like obviously they've been cleared to talk about it. So whenever they talk about interdimensionality and stuff like that, like they never explain what that means, right? Like I think Eric Weinstein was on Twitter, like he was constantly complaining about it. Why are there no physicists, blah, 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 blah. But he's got a point in the sense that like no one ever explains what they mean by interdimensional beings. Like what does that mean? Does that mean like different realities that are overlapping?
Does it mean like what Philip K. Dick did in Man in the High Tower, where they're just going between dimensions of actual reality?
I think that's exactly what it means. But no one ever defines it. They just talk about it. But I think that's what this E8 lattice theory kind of explains. And this is where there's a British researcher, an American researcher, and an Irish researcher. So Steve Mera, Barry Fitzgerald, and then relatively newer on the scene is Nathaniel Gillis, where like Steve Mera started with like poltergeist activity and kind of like looking at the Skol experiment. Are you familiar with the Skol experiment?
The Skol experiment?
Skol, Scole.
Refill me in.
This is more people should know about because it is absolutely wild. So they did an experiment in England in the town of Skol in the 90s. Okay. And in that experiment, you're familiar with like Stephen Greer and his CE5.
Uh-huh.
That's just another flavor of this, which back in the day during the spiritualist movement, people would engage in seances, right? Mm-hmm. So they typically have, I want to say it's like 5 or 7 sitters, where they have people sit around the table and they all kind of get into like a trance-like state and they summon or invoke entities, okay? So they systematically tried to do this in 1992 and documented and recorded everything that happened. So typically it would start with poltergeist activity. Then they would start to see or hear disembodied voices, and then they would got into a closer thing where and they would swap out people because you have to have the right number of folks around the table. And then they would eventually experience apports. So you know what an apport is? Mm-hmm. It's just when something will just materialize out of thin air, like a marble or like when you start going into the whole cryptid kind of
cryptids.
The cryptid thing.
This is layered. That
happens with all that, or has been suggested to happen with. I think a lot of it's similar stuff. It's just called different things. Mm. So, things started materializing. And then at some point there was like entities that they started physically seeing, and they have one on camera. Like I can't make it up. It's called Mr. Blue. Just look it up. Right. And there's just like, it looks like a gray. It's just like glowing blue and just kind of on camera. Anyway, there's also a technique called quantum imaging where they're able to take, somehow access these overlapping realities and take pictures around. Again, I haven't seen it. I haven't experienced it. I'm just reporting.
Just reporting the facts.
Okay.
Gotcha. Oh, there it is. Does that look familiar?
Yep, that's it.
That's not creepy looking at all. Holy shit.
What ended up happening is the experiment kind of got out of control and they just stopped it. But anyway, Steve Mera pointed me to this E8 lattice theory as kind of a model of reality that's close to that.
Yeah, I really do think there's something to the different dimensions of possibility. And I've really thought this since talking with Michio Kaku back in episode 145 a few years ago, because to me, he always explained it the best, where he'd talk about like, imagine if you had a transistor radio and you just turned it a little bit, and instead of us two, there'd be a dinosaur right here. And I'm like, that actually clocks, because to me, we're so far away from wherever the bottom layer of physics is, and there are so many different weird things that happen, and I'm spaghettiing a bunch of things in my head right now that are inexplicable, whether it be something like deja vu or dreaming something into existence, or the fact that you dream it all and basically turn into a nightly death state in a way, going outside your own consciousness to understand something else or see things that could be real or later come real in the world. All these things like put together, followed by the happenstance of time and place and situation and all the possible outcomes with like the butterfly effect and things like that. To me, it would make sense that there are different physical realities that exist based on each distinct possibility, if that makes sense. Like this is where it gets into like time travel and stuff like that as well. But that was kind of what sold me on some of this, because when you talk to Michio about time travel, he's like, it's not as simple as going back to April 14th, 1965 and making sure John Wilkes Booth doesn't make it in there with the gun. You can go do that, but you're not changing the reality you're coming from. You're creating a new estuary on the river, and you're changing a different reality, meaning a different dimension for what that is. And this is exactly what Philip K. Dick laid out effectively. And that seems like there is a there.
So the question is if there are entities that have kind of figured this out first, they might be poking into this reality. Again, I'm pure spec.
Let's go.
Yeah, pure spec, right? They could be poking in it. I mean, and that's the same thing could be how time works. It sounds like in the block universe, again, I'm not a physicist. I think the way it works is that everything is kind of, it's already happened. And if you just went back, you're not going to change anything, because if you change something, that was the way it was always supposed to be. It sounds like Michio Kaku's referring to something different. Maybe it's like a Hugh Everett many worlds theory, right? But the thing about that, though, is the math, and again, not a physicist, don't fully understand it, is that once a reality is set, all the possibilities collapse, and you can never go to a parallel like that. That branch is forever closed. Now, maybe there's some other way to get there, and which he seems to be referencing, because, I think Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation was like in the 1960s. So there's been a lot of changes since then. And I think the way that this stuff works, wouldn't necessarily have to have been classified, right? You've heard the Mark Andreessen, he had that interview where they were talking about AI and somebody in the White House, and they were talking about, we're going to need to classify some of this. And Mark Andreessen's like, how are you going to classify basic? Like, this is mathematics. You can't classify mathematics. And whoever he was talking to at the White House said, we absolutely can. We've classified whole areas of physics. So, yeah, it's on Twitter. You can find it. Like, it's just.
Can we find that, Deef? We've classified whole areas of physics. That's the word they use.
Yeah. That's not surprising.
It's not. It's just the brazenness of just saying that out loud to a dude who's going to run on Joe Rogan and then say that. That's interesting to me. Wow. Because, like, do you think, a little sidebar here, you think they got shit like anti-gravity?
Maybe. Maybe.
Where would it come from if they had it? Like, did they get it from somewhere else?
Well, then we get into kind of layers of control, right? When you talk about Epstein.
I wasn't even going there, but do sign me up. Let's go.
Well, I'll give you an example. There's somebody just told me the name, but Epstein's bragging about this cold fusion guy that he just
Pons.
Yeah, Stanley Pons, right? Where he's just like, yeah, I took care of him. So anytime there's an invention like that, there's just some weird system above the nation state level that just kind of shuts things off or makes them go away. And there are folks that I've interviewed who I can't verify any of these claims, and that's the other thing too. That this deep into the interview, I need to emphasize. There's a ton of mis and disinformation in this that is deliberately meant to steer you away from things. So, as an example, like the Tic Tac thing, the fact that they're, it's definitely not Russia or China. Like, it's definitely not. Now, could it be ours?
Like what they saw around the Nimitz and all that. Yeah.
Now, it could be ours, and the reason I say it could be ours is because what they're trying to tell us what it is, right? They're like pushing away from that.
Why do you say it's just at the outset? Why do you say it's definitely not Russia or China to start?
Because we wouldn't be the global hegemon if that were the
If
case.
they had that.
Yeah, there's no way.
I think I agree with you.
So anyway, kind of just going back to it, but I don't think it's ours, but I'm willing to, admit that I could easily be wrong.
Yeah, that's actually one, because to get more specific, one of the stories you hear with that is David Fravor, Commander David Fravor, who talks about seeing the Tic Tac and then has the video of it that shows something clearly doing some weird shit that was technology we didn't have in 2004 and we still don't have right now. That said, I'd be open to it being something else for sure, meaning not of this universe. But I've always looked at that one, and I don't know why. I just love how he describes it, because he's just giving you the facts of what he saw and letting you decide. I appreciate that about David Fravor. I look at that one and I go, if DARPA was talking telepathically to dolphins in fucking 1992, I feel like they might have had some weird tic-tac flying in odd directions by 2004. Maybe I'm crazy, but...
So this is the reason I don't think it's ours. So I spent, 4 out of my 5 years in the Army training U.S. forces for Iraq and Afghanistan, right? So I was what they would call the Red Team, Op 4. was an expert in Soviet doctrine and tactics because that's what we were focused on.
In what? Soviet?
Doctrine and tactics.
Okay.
Before 9/11, right? After 9/11, we changed things up a little bit but we would have these massive war games with, 5 to 10,000 people on both sides. And it was like a big advanced version of laser tag. We had these little like Raytheon kind of lasers that could reach out and touch something 2 kilometers away. And then there'd be a little light and we would track everything.
Where would you do this?
In the Mojave Desert, Fort Irwin.
That's kind of gangster.
U.S. National Training Center. It was a blast because unlike many other kind of countries, the way that we train as we fight, right? But our mission was to beat the shit out of whoever they put us up against so we could expose all the areas of weakness that they could shore up before they went to actual combat. But having had that experience, it's highly dangerous, right? And you don't inject things that the people who are on either side don't know about. So, and that was just kind of ground, some limited air, right? We would call in A-10s and stuff like that just to...
Whoa. You're going all out.
Yeah, it was... We would use CS gas because we were Russian. We could use chemical weapons. So, I mean...
you're playing the Russians.
Oh, yeah. We do paper... and we also would do deception, right? So I would go buy like 100 blue paper plates from Walmart and we would lay them out like minefields, right? And then, we'd just wait in the keyhole position and, the unit would come in and think they're minefields. They're just, they could just drive around and then we would ambush them and kill them, right?
Oh my God.
So yeah, we got
with the
really
fake
into
Raytheon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They just like,
they're still alive.
Called the whoopee light. Yeah. It's like whoop, whoop, whoop. Like we got you, right?
Do you talk to them in the Russian accent too? Like, we got you, motherfucker.
No.
You're not doing that.
But
you got to play the part. Come on.
No, it was fun. It was fun.
It seems I can see your eyes going back there.
Yeah. It was like getting out there and like getting all the equipment back and all that. Like that was just a pain in the ass. But once like that 3 to 4 hours of like fake combat, which is not, it's not real. I have buddies who went overseas after that. I didn't go overseas, which I regret, but most people who went overseas, like, you didn't miss anything, buddy. You're okay. But, they said that it gave them a pretty good experience. The only thing that it didn't do well is it didn't simulate the kinetic aspects. Like when I fire this rocket into a wall, there's going to be shrapnel, right? And anyway, I'm getting off topic here. So
no, it's good. I like tangents.
The point is when you're, these operations were mainly on the ground and there were no surprises. Could you imagine if you're flying a multi-million-dollar aircraft on trying to land on a aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean? You're just going to be like, surprise! Here's something that's absolutely crazy and you don't expect. I'm not saying it wouldn't be done, but it would be highly, highly irresponsible to do something like that because, the military cares very much about safety, cares very much about protocol, and that would be the most unsafe thing I could possibly imagine that you would do, aside from setting a carrier on fire just to,
right,
for feels, right? So that's why I don't think it's our